general business, and I'd like to take the screen again with the matter that's come to in public interest of the pavilion at the Suttons Beach. So I have a general business item here that I'm sure we will discuss and have more conversation as we go, but can I just have those two motions please first? I move that the current and future reports and photos the council holds be made public, and that the community engagement be brought forward to the 11th of February 2022, and we'll explain a bit more of that further down the track as we talk about it. So can I have somebody second that motion? Councillor Winchester, thank you. Councillors, we've had a lot of discussion in the last 2 days through the media, through social media, through emails of the pavilion at Suttons Beach, and I'll ask the director soon to go through a historical link of what's happened there and give us a true and accurate record, I suppose, of the pathway and the journey we've been on so far. But unfortunately, in discussions with the tenant who was on that site and who knows some of the issues there that's been going on for a number of years, and council did have discussions last year with the tenant in February last year, and notified the tenant that his lease was coming up to expire in November and that it would not be renewed by council due to the ongoing issues with that building. The tenant then, I believe, asked for an extension of time over the Christmas period so he could continue trading and get through that probably a popular and a busy time for him there, which we agreed to. And I believe he also asked that we not make public the issue of the building and the structure so it wouldn't impact negatively on his business, which we agreed to. We then also said we will come back and discuss in February this year of a way forward of him exiting the building, and then the release of information to the community of the state of the building and the way forward that council is going to proceed. Unfortunately, the day before that meeting was supposed to occur, he decided to make it public that he was being removed from the premises and the building was going to be demolished. So we just want to correct some of the record that's out there and some of the public information that's been shared. As I said, we had a plan to do that to the public. We weren't going to hide anything. We were going to be transparent with this. But unfortunately, the tenant decided to go on his own track and his own journey, and some of that information hasn't been shared as well. So we want to be transparent with this council. We want to be open and transparent with our community. So that's why I want these documents to be released, the reports that we have on the building, which I believe are 4 building reports, and also photos of some of the damage there, and the path and the journey that we had going down after those briefings we received last year on the state of the condition of that building. So I'd now like to hand over to Director Martini to give us a bit of a recap of what's happened and the progress forward.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to start off, just a summary of the life of the Pavilion building, the former bathing pavilion, Pavilion 1. It was constructed in 1937 and comprised a kiosk, dressing rooms, lockers, lavatories and showers. In 1975, the facility was then changed from a sort of like a bathing pavilion focus to a museum, Redcliffe Museum, and that continued to operate from that site from 1975 to the year 2000, where the museum was relocated to its current site on Anzac Avenue. A couple of the reasons that were given for the change was the lack of size for the bathing pavilion compared to what the museum required, and secondly, given the environmental conditions, it was thought to be detrimental to the items in the museum. The building was then, after 2000, was modified to accommodate commercial tenant Samsung Suttons during the course of the 1990s and early 2000s, and from 2006 to the current day, the facility has been leased. The building has had a number of reports conducted associated with it, and of recent times, certainly since 2020 through to the current January 2022, there is a number of reports have been done. Firstly, FSA consulting engineers from February, June of 2020 Converge Heritage and Community consultants. They were more looking at the heritage aspects of the facility in April 2020. BE Collective, another engineering firm, again doing a structural audit review of the facility in May 2020. GHD provided undertook an inspection and provided a letter of advice in August of 2020. And finally, the Consulting Engineers and Associates undertook a investigation and a inspection in December of 2020. They also, in that COVI report, draw all the other engineering reports together. So it's probably a good report to look at and consider, given it does include all those other commentaries from the other consultants. And finally, Ian McDonald Architects, the heritage architect, provided a report to the council in January 2022 about the bathing pavilion and its heritage, etc. The key issues for the facility and where we are currently, there's been prolonged water ingress to the facility, both through the back wall in terms of the embankment to the lower level of the bathing pavilion, and certainly through the upper deck, through the roof and the awnings, etc., and windows on the level 1 of the facility. The other key issues going forward is the condition of and the age of the concrete and the associated structural elements. The upper floor, which I touched on just a minute ago about the ingress, requires demolition of the walls, windows, roof lining, and potentially roof structure. And if the roof structure goes, HVAC will have to be relocated as well and re-put back, and a replacement of those. So certainly, to be clear, the top floor is recommended by the 2 engineering consultants that needs to be removed. The other key elements from a structural point of view is the rear retaining wall. It has 3 functions. It retains the embankment, prevents water ingress to the lower level, and supports the upper level suspended slab and structure above. So that needs to be confirmed, because the integrity of that is questionable. The location and exposure, obviously, of the facility, it's an 85-year-old building in a marine environment, which is very harsh. And the other final key issue would be the consultants' advice that they've provided to date is somewhat limited in terms of their ability to access the full structure, given that it was an active tenancy and they couldn't get to some areas that were covered by finishes like a kitchen, etc. Key quotes, I'll just give you some key quotes from some of the reports, which goes to the point of some of the concerns relating to the state of the building. The major issue has been prolonged water ingress. This has resulted in many reported failures, including the roof, external cladding system, wall cladding, glazing, balcony flooring, awnings and parapets, and retaining walls. More invasive investigations revealed that the water ingress has led to significant structural issues in some cases. Next quote, the upper level suspended slab forms part of the original structure, has reached the design serviceable lifespan of the structure. At its structure's end of serviceable lifespan, you expect the onset of more significant ongoing and sustained repair works requirements. This is not a line in the sand, and it may not be immediate, but just as it may well already be occurring. And given the age of the structure, it is likely that the original concrete has undergone some significant carbonation and is now low strength. Now, just the carbonation is a chemical reaction which affects the pH of the concrete. The higher the pH, the better protection there is for the steel reinforcement within the concrete structure. So it is expected that over time that the carbonation effect has lowered the pH of the concrete, and as a result, there calls into question the quality and veracity of the steel reinforcement in the structure. Council, as I said earlier, has engaged 2 heritage consultants over the course of the last 2 years. One was Converge Heritage and Community in April of 2020, and as I said before, Ian McDonald Architects in January, released a report in January 2022. Again, I'll just read a couple of key quotes from their reports. As demonstrated throughout this report, and I'm talking about the Converge report, the former Suttons Beach Bathing Pavilion has been irreversibly altered and is no longer a representative example of 1930 pavilion. The stairs from Marine Parade retain much of the original integrity and should be preserved, and both consultants agree with that. If the existing building is demolished in the future, any new development on the site should ensure the character of the foreshore is not impacted. It's not necessary or recommended to build a replica pavilion. However, details such as current setback and original size and bulk of the former bathing pavilion should be respected and considered for new developments. And finally, it is concluded that the place now retains only some remnant original elements and is overall a highly altered building with poor integrity. The building now expresses a fake 21st century replica unrelated to its historical origins as part of the 1930s foreshore development and upgrade. The building is no longer able to sufficiently express its historical association with Redcliffe's 1930s foreshore development and upgrading, regardless of the fact that this was an important phase of Redcliffe's development. Going forward, Mr. Mayor, next steps would provide, as you have said earlier, all those reports that's outlined and we've gone through earlier will be on the council's webpage. The tenant is scheduled to leave the premises on or before the 28th of February this year. We would then secure the site by no later than the end of that week, so that it will have a site construction fence around it to protect the public from getting into the building and prevent people from getting into the building. Commence community engagement from the 11th of February and run that through to July, August, if not longer. Organise and undertake investigative works, which will include removal of internal finishes, for example, the lower kitchen, and undertake non-invasive invasive testing. And this would commence with writing a brief almost immediately to undertaking the work, which we anticipate will terminate around May, June of 2022. Provide the findings of this report and publish on the council's webpage. At the same time, as we are undertaking the investigation works and the brief for that, we will continue the application for demolition through a DA process, which we expect will run in parallel with the investigative works and will take about approximately 3 months to complete. No decision will be made until the immediate investigation works are completed and a report is produced, and then the position would need to be determined at that stage, which is estimated to be around June, July of 2022. Mr. Mayor. Thank you,
Director Martini, and I'd just like then, when that report, item 6, then when that report's done, that it comes back to a council meeting to one to publicise that report and to proceed, if council proceeds on that track that we're going down, or not. Councillors asked for comment. Councillor Winchester. Carl, did you?
Muted there. That's right. Sorry.
Sorry, Carl, did you?
Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for bringing forward this general business item, and Director Martini for going through the background of this issue. I also greatly support the releasing of the engineering reports and engaging in community consultation regarding council's future plans. Like many residents across the Moreton Bay region, I'm saddened that the demolition of Suttons Pavilion is the ultimate outcome. It is a gut-wrenching end to a journey to save the building. I've had a lot of conversations with locals over the past couple of days about this site. While the shock of the news has stirred understandably strong feelings, people I've spoken with understand the reasoning behind this outcome, given the facts of the situation. However, I do strongly believe that the Rotunda can stay on at Suttons Beach. And with your support, Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to this motion to include the following wording, if I can. That the Moreton Bay Regional Council commit to retaining the Rotunda bandstand at Suttons Beach in recognition of its iconic value, and that it is distinct from the issues associated with the pavilion buildings.
So happy to accept that. We might put that as dot point 3, that the council commit to retaining the Rotunda at Suttons Beach. And what was the second part, Councillor Winchester?
The second part was the wording is that the Moreton Bay Regional Council commit to retaining the Rotunda bandstand at Suttons Beach in recognition of its iconic value. and that it is distinct from the issues associated with the pavilion buildings.
Thank you. We put that in as dot point 3. Mr. CEO, did you want to comment on that, whether that wording needs to be altered or anything, with the intent that we want to achieve?
No, I think it's suitable wording, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could,
yes, Councillor Winchester, continue.
I could speak to that amendment, or was it to be seconded?
Yeah, happy for that to be part of the original
Thank
motion.
Just to speak to the Rotunda, well, I've sought feedback and received support for retaining the Rotunda. I believe it is iconic in its own right, and it's not subject to the same damage as I've put there in the dot point 3. I strongly support saving the Rotunda for future generations to enjoy its shade and continue to be a stunning setting for marriage ceremonies. I think it's part of the overall, brand and vision for the peninsula. It's definitely a fixture of the foreshore that I'd like to see continue on to the future as well. So I'd encourage council to support its protection and potential relocation, same part of Suttons Beach, if that needs to be part of the process, to ensure its integrity and that it continues to be sited there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Winchester. Can we just also add, probably just addition to the first one, that all current future reports and photos be made public of the pavilion structures? So we just, because it's just talking about Suttons Beach as the heading there, we don't want to talk about the foreshores or anything. Councillor Gillum.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just with regard to item 3, that Carl moved and you and the seconder supported, you supported. The pavilion in its present site is probably not in a good position, so that committing to retain it, that just means at Sutton Beach, but not necessarily in its present position. Is that what's meant there?
Yeah, Councillor Winchester.
Yes, Councillor Gillum. It does not necessarily need to be where it is currently physically situated, but somewhere around that site to help progress, whatever happens in the future.
Right. Okay, I got no problem with that. And just in the first motion, the pavilion structures should be up after photos.
Yep, thank you.
No worries.
Always handy to have a couple of teachers on the council. Councillor, have you finished that, Councillor Gillum?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
You, Councillor Constance.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is just in regards to that third dot point, and it probably picks up on what Mick was saying. The retaining of the Rotunda at Suttons Beach in recognition of its iconic value. Well, I just wonder if we need to get a little looser in the wording, perhaps saying, this within the precinct or something like that, as opposed to necessarily at that location, because I'm concerned that the third recommendation there creates confusion and suggests that it might have to be kept at the spot where it is. And also I do question the iconic value, whilst I know it looks good, and I probably appreciate iconic over heritage value for it, because I don't know if that's necessarily the right wording either, given that it's a roughly 20-year-old kit form structure from Victoria.
Yeah, Councillor Winchester, would you like to?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Look, I think regardless of the age or the origin from interstate, I think it has become an icon of the peninsula in much the same way as the Rotunda on the jetty is as well. And the jetty itself at Redcliffe's, I think that was about 1909 or 2000, so it's roughly the same sort of an age too. But it's something that I think a lot of people, not just locals, but visitors across the region from southeast Queensland and beyond, associate with the peninsula, with our Moreton Bay region. I think over the years, there's been many people get married, have their ceremonies beneath that Rotunda and had celebrations there, which are of course memories that they'll hold for life and to cherish, and would like to be able to revisit, as well as people take that opportunity into the future as well. You know, there's a few things like this around the peninsula which I think we've got to hang on to, even if, you know, it's only 20 years old. Over that time, it has become, I think, a very strong icon of the peninsula, and one of those things that we really cherish. So, you know, given it isn't affected by the issues outlined in the engineering report, I can't see a need to see that part of the face of the foreshore go unnecessarily if it can be avoided. So that's one of the main reasons that I'd like to see this retained, and I think the community have voiced support for this as well.
Thank you, Councillor Winchester. Any other questions? Councillor Constance? All good? Thank you. Councillor Gillum, you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. We're not just going to be demolishing this building if it gets demolished. We'll be putting something in its place. So I understand that our staff have already looked at some sort of concepts, and no doubt there will be some community input invited. This will be taking place. Any idea when?
I think that's part of the community engagement process, my understanding, Councillor Gillum, and
Okay.
Mr. CEO, you might want to touch on that and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's when we talk about the initial works there that were proposed. Once we get on that path of demolition, then we'll be making the area safe, turn it back to a lot of green grassed areas with toilets, change facilities, the ability for food trucks to go in there and park and be able to provide food services for people during the days and during the weekends. And then that's during that period is when the consultation with those other concepts that we've looked at, and what else is going to be put into that facility. So it's a journey that we're going on. The first bit is just to making it safe and getting it back to the public to be able to use that facility while we work out what we're going to replace the pavilion with.
So the point I'm sort of getting at is it's not as though we're going to demolish it and leave nothing in its place. Just like when the council, the former Redcliffe Council, did the jetty, they knocked the old jetty down and rebuilt with a new jetty because the old one was just stuffed. Same with Woody Point, it's been renewed. So this is really just part of an ongoing process of once something gets old and buggered, it can't be repaired anymore, and it's just reached the time where it has to be demolished and something will get rebuilt in its place. And it's really up to the public now to get involved if they really care and make sure they get their thoughts heard by council about what they want there. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, that's dead right, Councillor Gillum. It will be replaced with something, which we'll work out what that will be, and that's where we'll consult with the community. They can have their input, but it is unsafe moving forward, and it is an issue as Director Martini outlined. So it will be replaced with something. We've just got to work out what, and that's the plan that was always been in place, but and have been discussed with the previous tenant of going down that journey when we went to public consultation. Public engagement, which was planned, but unfortunately we weren't able to tell that story due to the issue being raised by the tenant about the building to be demolished without the whole story being told. So hopefully this will correct that record.
So just following on from that, these investigations we're going to be doing will probably cost 150,000. We know the building's buggered, so to speak. Would it be better off, rather than doing the extra investigations just to prove that it's buggered, that we put that money towards whatever's going to be coming there in the future? Just a thought.
Yep, understand your point, Councillor Gillum, and as we've chatted, we want to prove, without question, I suppose, the community that we have gone down every rabbit hole. We've looked at every opportunities to look at saving this building due to the connection with the Redcliffe Peninsula and also probably the wider Moreton Bay region. However, these works I believe we need to do to show the community that we've explored every avenue possible, and that we're not taking this decision lightly, and we need to show the community that they can have confidence in decisions that we make. And we're going down that journey, being open and transparent with the community. And if it takes a little bit of money to show that, I think we need to do that to keep our reputation and our relationship with the community intact and continuing to grow stronger and stronger.
Okay.
Councillor Constance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could yourself or one of the staff perhaps just provide some clarity on how this consultation moving forward will tie into the previous significant body of work we did around the Redcliffe Foreshore Master Plan and Activation Strategy? I mean, that document's only a couple of years old and gives a pretty good indication from a significant body of public consultation on what we believe would see there, the vision, the activation. And whilst I acknowledge that there was certain exclusions and provisions around the Sutton Beach Pavilion area in terms of additional trade, we have a pretty good idea, I think. So I'm just curious as to how this consultation will tie to that.
I'll hand over to Ms. CEO. Is there a director you'd like to answer that question?
Yeah, thanks. Happy to take that question, Councillor. That previous consultation gives us the context, so to speak, for this particular consultation. This one, as the Mayor said, we were scheduled to kick off at the end of February, hopefully with a joint statement from the tenant. The situation has changed, so as the Mayor is proposing, we'll kick off on the 11th of February. But this is really particularly about, on the basis that the 3 engineering reports have said what they've said, and the ageing structure, what would the community like to be there? What has helped in the previous engagement for us now is that's led us down the path of saying the replacement of the building initially will be, as the Mayor has outlined, grassed areas, made it safe, a toilet block, power and conduits for food trucks, etc. So it's basically returning the space to the people for use of picnics, barbecues, etc. And that's come out of the context of that earlier engagement about what do people want on the foreshore. And it was very clear out of that exercise that people want public space. They don't want private space on the whole. And so it's returning it to public space. The consultation in parallel will say, well, do you want that forever, or what else would the community like to be there? But our thinking was it was important to return to public space as soon as we possibly can, hence running all these processes in parallel that Director Martini and the Mayor have talked about. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. CEO. Does that answer your question, Councillor Constance?
Yeah, I think it does, Mr. Mayor. As the CEO said, that previous strategy provides the framework and context. So very good.
Thank you, Councillor Constance. And I just want to make clear that this will be remaining public ownership. We will not be selling this off to developers as hinted out there by some people. It will be public ownership, and if we did sell it to the current tenant who is apparently saying he wishes to purchase it, it will go into private ownership, and we do have not any control over what could happen in the future. And we do not want to see units there. We do not want to see townhouses there, and we don't want to see any other kind of facility that's going to take away from the public use. So it will remain in council land and council's ownership. Been any other questions, councils, or comments? There's a hot topic at the moment in the community, but I believe this will set the record straight and explain the process and the journey that we're going on, and take that community on that journey with us, which is a difficult decision. As we've said, the last thing we want to do is knock down a building that we don't have to, and the connection has with the community out there, but we have no other choice. And hopefully this documentation, these reports, and this final report will prove that to council. So, Mr. CEO, I just want the understanding too that once that final report's been done, that will come back to council for information and to a public meeting, which we can then announce to the public if the process.
Yes, they've got to come back for a final decision of council at that point in time.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors. We'll put that in vote then. All those in favour of that motion? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.